Often when resources are restricted is when innovation and entrepreneurship thrives, not under overbloated venture-backed firms like OpenAI. Hey friends, I'm Kaylin Sapir, and you're listening to AI and Anxious, a show making the AI future less scary, one conversation at a time. I've had the flu the past week, that's why I sound like a bit of a frog. I did actually make another podcast episode with my AI voice clone and AI agent, Dr. Keish Money, talking to each other about creating revenue-generating AI agents, so I didn't have to talk. But I will release that at a later date, as it was a bit underbaked and quality assured by someone who doesn't really have two brain cells to rub together at the moment. But instead, we are going to talk about a new AI model released called DeepSeek, which you may or may not have heard of, that everyone is losing their minds over, which has moved $13 trillion in funds on Wall Street because investors are pooping their pants over AI scalability and the competitive landscape. So that is so fun for investors, but talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, there's this model DeepSeek, which everyone is super hyped about because it's the first AI model to really shake up the big boys in the past 2 years, because it performs at a similar level to Claude and leading ChatGPT models that themselves cost hundreds of millions to run, if not billions at this point. And the cost for DeepSeek was in the single-digit millions, so obviously still expensive, but it can be faster to use than the leading models and is free / supposedly open source and requires much less cost and resources to run. So that's a huge deal because, OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and all these massive tech giants, they're multi-billion-dollar valuation because, seemingly the tech leaders are the only companies that can achieve this because it's so resource and cost intensive. And so the entry for competitors is just near impossible. But DeepSeek has come in and created this new model that's benchmarking pretty amazingly. There's also the matter of multimodality. So even though it's performing at levels of Claude and ChatGPT o1, there's quite a limit on modality, especially in terms of vision. So when you can upload images to be able to provide additional context to ChatGPT and Claude, you can share images and files with DeepSeek. However, they are using really old technology like 1960s OCR to read images, and often it won't be able to read images, which is quite a important way of being able to give AI context and to have a better output in the end. So while it's performing really well, it doesn't take into account how multimodality and more complex and feature-heavy models like Claude and ChatGPT holistically perform as models. However, it's still, an amazing model, and I'm sure that there'll be additional features from there, but there is a level of consideration for the holistic context input and also the ability to output different formats as well. But I personally wouldn't use it instead of Claude. I do shill Claude a lot. I'm not actually in partnership with Anthropic, the creators of Claude, but I just use it because it's better, in my opinion, for my use cases than ChatGPT. But I wouldn't use it because the data privacy stipulations in DeepSeek are pretty scary. It's already had a major data breach in the past 12 hours as well, meaning people can't sign up at the moment or even use some of the APIs which I'll talk about more later. I'll try my best not to make disgusting flu sounds while I'm doing this podcast, but yeah, no guarantees because I do feel disgusting at the moment. But anyway, yeah, so with the DeepSeek model, essentially it's an AI model you can sign up to. I'll put the links in the description, but new people can't sign up at the moment because of the data breach. So it's performing at O1 levels, which is level 2 on OpenAI's 5-part AGI roadmap plan, aka AI becoming, super beings. But O1, I actually don't use it that much. I think it was overhyped, and I think it still is overhyped. But there'll be some other models coming out this year. So O3 is like the big daddy to the O1. So I think that'll be really interesting. There might be a step change there in capability, but yeah, O1 I wouldn't even say is like the best benchmark. But it definitely is benchmarking at Claude Sonnet 3.5, which is Anthropic's latest model, which I think is better than ChatGPT. And I use that as my main AI companion. And yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a better model, the DeepSeek. It does perform pretty fast, and I suppose depending on your patience levels, that might be a differentiator for you. But there are many considerations and attributes that you have to think of when you think about an AI model, not just about, the cost and the speed, but, data privacy. Does it have certain features and shortcuts and things that you want to use? It's really like, picking a car. Like what do you actually care about when it comes to how it performs and what it can do? You know what I mean? But yes, the huge deal about this is that it is benchmarking with some of the best of them, and it took way less resources and cost to create. So Llama, which is released by Meta, is also an open source model, which means that you can theoretically download it to your computer if your computer's, beefy enough, has enough good tech specifications. Then you can run it on your machine, meaning you can have your own AI model on your computer free of use with no data security issues. Everything stays on your machine, which, is very advantageous for people wanting to keep their data private from these big tech companies. Yes, so that's pretty amazing. Even though Llama is performing well, I would say DeepSeek is better than Llama. Therefore, DeepSeek is now the best open source model available, assuming you can get access to it, which people can't at the moment, but I'm sure they'll resolve that soon. But yes, so DeepSeek was released a couple of days ago. But yes, as of 13 hours ago, had a massive cyber breach, which meant that, well, we don't know the extent of what that means, but likely that they leaked a lot of data to their attackers, including personal identifiable information and just general data that was put into the model. And that's affecting, 6 million users or however many people ended up signing up. Obviously, we don't know the full details, but that's the general assumption based on website visits and click rates and some publicly available analysis that you can make that inference. But I actually didn't sign up to DeepSeek directly because when I read the terms of use and privacy policy, I was not super impressed with how little data sovereignty there was there. Probably one of the more dubious terms of use and privacy policies I've read for AI models. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't like the stipulations of they can keep your data even after account deletion. They can share data with their corporate group, whoever that is, which wasn't clearly defined, and they monitor all inputs and outputs for risk filtering. So, any data that you're putting in to their model, if you sign up via the direct user interface, if you sign up on the web and use the model that they're hosting, say goodbye to all of your data, anything that goes in or out. So not super crazy about that, but having DeepSeek as an open source model that you can download directly to your machine and have it perform at the level of Claude 3.5 is very attractive. So to be clear on using an open source model, the open source model I was talking about earlier, Llama, you can download and use that pretty freely and easily on like any laptop. Whereas DeepSeek requires probably like hundreds of gigabytes of RAM and like a decent GPU on your computer. So it's not like something you can spin up on a laptop, whereas there are other open source models you can spin up on a laptop. There are some ways to access DeepSeek. I mean, currently it's down, but being able to access on your machine, there are things called distilled versions of DeepSeek. So essentially, it's like the original model DeepSeek, but like a light version. So instead of shrinking, DeepSeek R1 is the standard model. Basically, engineers are starting with a different model, and they teach the base model to give answers similar to what a model like DeepSeek R1 would give. So it's kind of like having the smarts of DeepSeek R1, but in a potentially more efficient package. I have used some distilled versions of DeepSeek, and I wouldn't say it's as good. However, it still can demonstrate the general gist, and it's definitely a usable model. I'll put a link in the show notes too of access to a light model. You could use something called Open Router, which hosts a bunch of open source models. You don't actually have to download it to your machine because there's like a whole setup through that as well, which I explore in my course. But if you really just want to like get started right away, you could use something like Open Router. But yes, terms and conditions are a wee bit dubious. Though in saying that, the OpenAI and Anthropic terms and conditions and all the big tech guys, they're just like less explicit and direct in their policies, I think. So, but I just know more about US regulations and laws a lot better than I know Chinese laws and regulations. So I guess from that perspective, I trust Anthropic the most in terms of ethical use of data. But yeah, it's a bit of a gray area across all the companies, unfortunately. But it is amazing that DeepSeek has shown that a model can be created at the fraction of a cost and with a lot less hardware resources. It just shows that AI advancement will be less bottlenecked by the increasingly tight supply of GPUs that are required to run these multi-billion parameter models. Now, the reason why, or the stipulation around why Wall Street is dumping a lot of its Nvidia stocks specifically is because people think that GPUs and the hardware that Nvidia produces that is used, like, is the best hardware for AI computational tasks. They think that if DeepSeek can achieve this and create models that are as good as Claude without needing like the scale of hardware, they think, oh, like GPUs won't be as necessary now. So Nvidia's just lost, a significant amount of value, which is crazy because it's very short-term thinking. There's always going to be a massive demand for hardware, both in commercial and consumer sectors. I'd personally love to have an AI mega tower that doesn't cost $35,000 to build. In the law of economics of supply and demand, like there is just way higher demand than supply. But by investors dumping some of their stocks, I mean, it's just frustrating because it just means that Nvidia has, I suppose, potentially less resources and market cap to actually like deliver on this hardware that's required. But yes, there will definitely still be huge requirements for GPUs. I mean, it's not like DeepSeek just was able to, I guess, hit a level of performance with less resources. It's not to say it didn't have any, like they still had a lot of hardware, like they still had a level of hardware resources to train the model. It was just far less than what seems to have been required for OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude. It's just, again, the economics, like it just means there's an ability for more competitors to enter the market to break up the usual tech oligarchy of OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Anthropic leading the race, who have been fueled by billions of dollars, whereas it supposedly took 6 million or so to train DeepSeek compared to OpenAI's tens, if not hundreds of millions. So it just means that we're making good economic progress and we're able to potentially break up the monopoly of the tech giants who are leading the race and making it very hard for other competitors to enter the market and put out AI models that are ultimately going to be potentially better for consumers at the end of the day. Though it was pretty interesting, there was also this announcement by Trump on the Stargate project, which is they're putting $500 billion into this project to create like a mega data center to host and maintain AI infrastructure, to create lots of American jobs, which honestly is not the worst idea, but it might be a slightly misguided view of, bigger is better, as is the American way sometimes. And, scale is the problem. But, DeepSeek has shown that bigger and better and more money may not necessarily be the answer. So, often when resources are restricted is when innovation and entrepreneurship thrives, not under overbloated venture-backed firms like OpenAI. Sorry, I don't mean to be so mean to OpenAI, but yes, I think it's important that, in quotation marks, like the little guys still have a chance in the AI race. And it also just means that AI advancement can go a lot faster and not be completely under the monopoly of these bigger tech companies, which I think is really important, just so that we as humans can actually benefit from the advancement of AI. In my last podcast, I was talking about what it can mean in the next 7 to 12 years if we do reach this level of superintelligence, how it can improve everyone's lives for the better and find solutions to otherwise quite difficult problems and actually disrupt positively the way that humans currently run our societies and how capitalism plays a part and how disadvantaged groups and inequitable structures can actually become better with AI. But yes, it just shows that while right now the revelation of DeepSeek was more, it's impressive that it's possible, and we've been shown it's possible to create these really performant models at a much lower cost, and that competitors can enter the market even with these massive tech giants. I think it's kind of insane the way that the stock market has reacted, but also like it'll correct itself, so I'm not too worried about that. And my Nvidia stocks. And I think the investment in this Stargate project might be slightly misguided, but I think overall it's positive to put such an investment into creating AI-driven jobs, because inevitably we will see a disruption to the job market and the workforce. I think overall positive when we can get the pendulum to swing the other way. But yeah, it'll take quite a few years of figuring out how to rearrange the workforce. But I think it'll be positive for people overall, and we'll actually have more interesting and better jobs to do. But it'll just be a bit chaotic in terms of getting from A to B to the AI utopia. But yes, I do want to say I do, of course, use ChatGPT sparingly. I don't just use Claude, and I do like some of the features it has. I think it's a valuable service for the average consumer wanting to be AI enabled. There are so many models. It really depends on your use case too, which is something I cover in the AI universe in my course, Gen.AI Jumpstart, which you can check out in the links. But overall, DeepSeek is a great movement forward in the AI space. Once it's actually up and running again, I will share some ways that you can use it and still be protective of your data. And I think the investment into specific AI infrastructure projects is really important. I think we will see more versions of DeepSeek. I know this year we'll see some additional models that are voice enabled by Anthropic. I know we'll see O3 come out with OpenAI which might blow out all of our minds. But yes, overall, I think DeepSeek is just helping us reach economies of scale with AI models, showing that we can have other competitors to make it a bit more of an equal playing field, which is great in the AI space, especially for consumers. But I do think it's not necessarily changed anything right this minute. It just has given food for thought in terms of what can be done with fewer resources to achieve better AI outputs. So yes, I think in terms of unlocking professional use cases, it's great that we have a new model like DeepSeek, but I still think there's a lot of gold to be uncovered with existing models and finding the right models for your use case and using different prompts across different models, because I would say the most success I've seen people achieve is more in the iteration of prompts and learning alongside the AI model. Picking the right AI model is important, and then iterating with that model is even more important. It's kind of like when you hire a new employee, yes, they need to be the right fit for the job, but they also need training with you on your specific company requirements and ethos and culture to actually become the best employee for your company. You can't necessarily expect them to walk in and be the best employee for you, but rather it's about iterating and training and onboarding and getting them to interact with the team. So I think a lot of people give up with models, or they'll try a model and then maybe a new shiny model will come out and then they expect that model to just instantly perform so much better than a different model they were using. But ultimately, it's kind of a bit of hard work you need to put in with models. A lot of iteration to uncover that golden use cases. But once you invest that time and start to see results, you'll understand what I mean. But I do have a lot of tips and tricks that I use to get more out of models and get better outputs, which is in my course as well. I think I'll leave it there. In closing, this episode has been unofficially sponsored by Vicks Vapor Rubs. I'm going to go have a lie down and wait for DeepSeek's founders to get their model up and running again. And I have 2 amazing guests coming up in the next fortnight, so I'm really excited for that. And I will release that unhinged episode with Dr. K. Shmoney on creating AI agents that enable revenue-generating opportunities, because it actually is interesting. I just think, yeah, don't do things when you're sick. It never turns out really well. But until next time, my friends, and stay well.
What are we saying to each other?
Seems they're trying to teach us a basic tonal vocabulary.
It's the first day of school, fellas.